Right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Adoption UK and FASD Hub. I'm delighted to have you all joining us this evening. My name's Claire Tyler. I'm the Community and Support Manager at Adoption UK. This evening we're very open. It's an Ask Anything event for about FASD. So really pleased to have you all joining us. I'm going to pass straight over to Ali, who's going to do an introduction and explain about this evening. Just to let you know though, sorry, we've got question and answers running at the bottom. So if you've got any questions that you'd like answered, just drop them in there. We've also got the chat facility running, and we don't use anybody's names. Everything's kept confidential. So we will say that somebody's asked this question about, so please feel free to ask any questions that you've got. So if I can hand over to you, Ali, thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Claire. My name's Ali Brown. Good evening. I'm the project manager and service lead for FASD Hub Scotland. It's fantastic to be here with you. FASD Hub is hosted and managed and run by Adoption UK. So the members of staff that you'll meet this evening all work for the organisation, and volunteers are kind of part of our community and clan, if you like. So I thought that we would just share a little bit with you about what we've been doing in Scotland, and share with you our new website that has loads of really good information. We're not going to do a presentation about FASD this evening. We're assuming that people will have some sort of knowledge, but if you don't have any at all, then there's lots of places that you can go to find that out, and I'll share that with you. So without further ado, this is our new website, which is you can access through FASDHub.Scot, really easy to remember, and just here in my corner here. So this is what our new website looks like, and you will find information on here about our services. It's obviously September and it's FASD month, so if you click into the FASD month, you would take you to this page, and on here you can see our brand new animation, which a number of us are sporting the background for, which is called FASD Makes Me Me, and it's the journey of a young person with FASD throughout the day, their friends and family, and what happens to them and how they experience the world. So we're going to play that in a little bit during this session. You then also find some ways that you can get involved. So even though it is the 15th of September, there's still plenty that you can do. If you've got a child or a young person or a young adult in your care who has a history of prenatal alcohol exposure, you could take part in our survey. They don't have to have an FASD diagnosis. We would love to hear from everybody. The survey is focused on that diagnostic process and the journey, but as I say, you don't have to have been on through that actual diagnostic process to fill in the survey. So really encourage people to do that after this evening's finished, or maybe tomorrow. Other ways to get involved as well, obviously joining the webinar. You could put on your Facebook or social media post that little image that says I support FASD Think Differently, which is our campaign for this year, all about raising awareness of why we need to think differently about FASD. Just as an individual with FASD thinks differently, those of us around them need to accommodate them and make changes into what we do to support them so they can be successful in life. And then we also have this month's webinar. So this is where you can book. Obviously that's what you've done, which is great, and that's why you're here. But this is also where you will find, once the video from this evening has been edited, and that will come up here, as will the one that was happened last week as well. So just click back to our main menu. We've got information about us and our service. You can find out who we are. You can come and meet the team. We've got core members of our team, which we're all listed here with a little bit of information about us. We look like the team of thousands, but we all work part-time hours, so it doesn't add up to that many full-time people, but we do a lot in those hours. We offer FASD training, so if you click into this, you will find the different modules that we provide, and if you're interested in something that we've got coming up, particularly around strategies for carers and also for educators, you can log in and sign to say that you'd like more information about that. So we're about to start piloting those at the end of this month, so that's really exciting. They'll probably be available for people from the winter months onwards. And if you live in Scotland, it's free of charge. If you're an Adoption UK member, then there's a small fee, and for everybody else there's a reasonable cost attached, but it's not expensive. You'll also find information about webinars that we've done previously. So there's a couple of examples of things that we did during FASD month last year, and links to our YouTube channel where you can find lots of things that we've done previously. How to get support from us. So we're a tiered support service for parents and carers, and we have a helpline. Anybody can ring that helpline and get information, signposting, and some general advice by somebody on the phone who will understand what your journey is like. You can also access our volunteer information if you'd like to become a volunteer. I'm really grateful that we've got Deborah with us tonight, who is one of our volunteers. And under, if you live in Scotland, within the getting information and getting support, you can find out about our one-to-one family service, which is where we can support you more directly in our tier 2. So lots of information there. Going down, we've got lots of different bits about resources. I'm not going to go through all of these individually, but I would draw your attention to our fact sheet section. So this is where we've produced some fact sheets around FASD, some general, what is FASD, some support signposting. So you can look at these online, or you can download them. You can hand them to teachers, doctors, community support workers, whoever's got involvement with you and your family. And we've recently produced one for prospective caregivers and foster carers, adopters, and also one for kinship carers. And I can tell you that there is another one coming out next week, very exciting, which is around visibility and FASD and how those things are impacted. We then have 6 fact sheets which are around education, and we are really lucky to have 2 members of our team who are trained and working teachers, and they work for us for a few hours or 6 hours each week as our FASD education advisors. So we've been able to produce these fact sheets along with Miranda, who's here this evening, who's one of our kind of friends in Edinburgh, who is an educational psychologist by day and research by night.
That feels a bit dubious.
Yeah, it's not dubious. So we've produced these, and Miranda and her colleague Morag have fed into them, along with Education Scotland as well. So loads of really useful information, again, totally designed for parents and carers, but also to share with educators. So under our resources, you'll find other things like our service directory that is specific to Scotland, but other information for parents and carers, and within here you'll find some signposting to resources that you could use with your children as well. Professionals, and what is FASD? So just in case you don't know what it is, there's a great definition that we always refer to. FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, is a lifelong disability that affects the brain and body of people who were exposed to alcohol in the womb. Each person with FASD has their strengths and challenges and will need specific and specialist support to help them succeed in many different parts of their daily living. We really like this. It's really simple. It's jargon free, and it's done by CAN FASD, who are one of the leading research establishments on the globe, really, for FASD. So we use that, and obviously we've referenced it to them. And then you can find some other general information and links to take you to further information about FASD. And below that, you'll find our signposting section. So this is where you can find links to other organisations, to podcasts, things that you might want to go and listen to. We've just also started doing our own blogging as a team. So those are the people that you saw that I've quickly scrolled past on the screen, but we also have a wider team of parent partners who all worked with our families directly, and they're all parents who've got a child with FASD or with prenatal alcohol exposure. So we're busily writing away and sharing kind of our own thoughts and feelings around different aspects of parenting an individual with FASD. I'm hoping that I might be able to persuade Carol to write us one from an adults with FASD perspective as well, and some of the other younger people that we've got who are real advocates within sort of our ambassador area. So that's a place to keep an eye on, and will be growing over the months to come. So that's a real wheel-stop tour of our service and our new website. So I hope you found that useful, and as I say, you can find it at www.fasdhub.scot. I'll hand back to Claire. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ali. There's so much information on the website. It's fantastic and really easy to use. So that's where we signpost you to. But thank you for the introduction. If I can go to Miranda now to introduce yourself.
So, well, I've had a lovely introduction so far. So Ali was saying, I'm an educational psychologist and I work for City of Edinburgh Council, and I'm part-time, so I work 2.5 days. So I try not work at night time when my research too much. So the rest of the time, I am a part-time PhD research student with the University of Edinburgh. And thank you, Ali. Ali's kindly put up the my research page. So my current research is looking at the experiences and the views of young people with an FASD diagnosis. Now, in the UK, we have extremely limited research in this area, and actually across the globe, very little research on young people's views of living with the impairments of FASD and the views around their diagnosis as well. So in terms of my study, it's just been widened to kind of include the rest of the UK. Previously, I was just looking at the kind of Scottish group, but just now it's been extended. So it's for young people who are aged 12 to 19, and they are aware of the FASD diagnosis, and they're in education, which could be school or college. And basically, it's a photo-based study. I'm working with them, and they're going to take pictures around their lives. So it could be, you know, and again, it could be supported by a parent, but it's for the young people to kind of reflect on, you know, what's important in their lives, what challenges and they face, and maybe how they deal with them, and any kind of strategies that they might find really, really helpful as well. So yeah, thanks to Ali, you've got that there, and we can maybe. I'm sorry, is everybody struggling to hear me with sound?
You're coming in and out. Yes, it's clear.
Oh, sorry.
That's perfect.
I'll try and come a bit closer.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm really all the information is on that website. I'll put it into the chat, the link. So people are really welcome to email me or to tweet me as well, to DM me. And yeah, I'm looking for young people. So you might know somebody, or you might be a young person with FASD. So please get in contact.
Thank you very much. And so we'll make sure everything gets put in the chat with all the main links. So thank you very much, Miranda. Debbie, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, I am Deborah Gilchrist, and I am an adoptive parent of a boy with FASD. He's now 12. I started out as his foster carer and then adopted him.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Debbie. Carol.
Hi, so my name's Carol. I am an adoptee and I'm also an adult living with FASD. I work for Adoption UK as the community engagement lead for our work in line with the promise, engaging young people and children to have their voices heard and at the heart of everything that we do. I am also a full-time guidance advisor at Fife College, and I volunteer with the FASD Hub and Children's Panel Scotland.
Very busy. Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you. And then Charlie.
Hello everyone, my name's Charlie Egan, Service Manager with St Andrews Children's Society, and we are an adoption and fostering agency with offices in Edinburgh and Aberdeen. And we also, as I explained to colleagues earlier, we also have a, I think is a pretty comprehensive post-adoption support service for families who have adopted and fostered children through the agency. I don't have vast amounts of experience in terms of FASD, but I am aware of some of the families that we work with and support who are, looking after young people and children who have obviously FASD or potentially FASD in their sort of background.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, panel, for being here tonight, because as I said, there's a wealth of knowledge and experience, which we're very grateful that you're sharing. We're going to go straight into some questions. We've had some questions in already, and we're going to start with diagnosis. So what is a pathway to get a diagnosis? Who would like to take that question first?
I don't mind answering that. So within Scotland, we're the only UK nation currently who has guidance around the diagnosis of FASD. That we've had that since 2019. But in England, the Nice Quality Standards have a draft out, and they have stipulated that they will be taking on the sign guidance as well. So that will probably be the place to go. As in, how would you actually start the process? We would always say that unless you've already got a link in with a community paediatrician, or you're already within a CAMS service, then the place to go is your GP. You need to take with you kind of your evidence, what your concerns and worries are, and we have some helpful resources that we could share with people to help them kind of think about that and collect their thoughts before they go. It's really important to kind of note, and I believe that this will be the same in England, but in Scotland, it is not CAMS who would give a diagnosis, it would be the paediatrician. So the paediatrician will be looking to engage with a number of services, so things like speech and language, OT, checking out genetics, looking for hearing and sight, those kind of things. So it's a real team sort of effort, but that does make the process sometimes a bit drawn out and, you know, can be at times frustrating. And obviously COVID has really impacted everybody across the nation in that way. I think the hope is that Wales will take on something similar to the Nice Quality Standards once they are published, and that is generally seems to sort of be the thing that goes. But health is a devolved, you know, to all the individual governments. So within Northern Ireland, there isn't yet an indication of what that might be.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Ali. When I went to get my son diagnosed, I'm an adoptive mum myself, I made a triple appointment with my GP and didn't take my son with me.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be able to talk very openly and honestly. So that'd be one of my tips. Make sure you book at least a double appointment with the GP, so you've got plenty of time.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well remembered, Claire. I mean, I'd say that as well for that first appointment with the paediatrician and also with CAMS, because there can be a lot of, you know, it could be uncomfortable discussion with a child in the room.
No, absolutely.
Could I maybe just add as well? So I do, I've done some work previously, was involved in a pilot as a professional, looking at FASD assessment. So I think within Scotland, and for some different health boards, they have a lot of assessment pathways.
Might need to move your mic up, Miranda. Is it on your headphones set?
No, it's not.
Oh.
Am I coming in and out? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Yes.
Apologies. So yes, you can tell me now. Yeah. Sorry. This will make a good recording though. So I would say in terms of, so sometimes clinicians can be very driven by a diagnostic pathway, and I think parents think, well, we're accessing a particular pathway, but I think we have to be mindful that in Scotland anyway, we're moving towards neurodevelopmental pathways. So actually, maybe a top tip for some parents out there would be to say to the GP or to the paediatrician, actually, I'd like a neurodevelopmental assessment, and there's a known history of prenatal alcohol exposure. So that can be a bit of an opening. Like, obviously, you know, as parents, you might be looking for an outcome of an FASD diagnosis and to formalize that, but that might be a way in to say, actually, I think it's quite a broad assessment. And that's the point of doing an FASD, is to get that broad overview. But sometimes those words of a neurodevelopmental assessment are a bit more of an easier conversation opener with health professionals, I think. Now, I'm not a health professional myself, so I'm just going to say I'm just aware of that, and I know the parameters of my my job. But that's coming from other people who are health professionals, and that's where we're moving in terms of a neurodevelopmental pathway as well.
Can I just add to that, Claire? I was just going to say, in terms of adopted children, in my experience, and I know it's probably a bit anecdotal of me to say this, it's fairly unusual for us to place a child with adopters where they have an FASD diagnosis. I mean, clearly there might be indicators that that's a possibility, but in my experience, it's very unusual, I would say, to, you know, for adoptive parents to be, you know, to be told that this is an issue for this particular child. And I suppose the reason I raise that is because I think, therefore, you know, for many adoptive parents, I think you're then setting on a journey really to try and, quite often you have to really push quite hard, actually, I think, you know, in order to make some headway and progress in terms of, you know, getting the diagnosis. So I think what you said a minute ago, Miranda, was really helpful, actually, just in terms of that, you know, some tips around.
No, thank you very much.
It's probably really important for prospective adopters or even those that maybe have only recently had a child in their family to kind of know that there was a piece of research that was done that showed that at the point of an adoption medical, 75% of that sample group had a prenatal alcohol history within their records, which is a huge, so, you know, you're probably better off thinking this is a thing, and exploring what that means for you and your family, rather than thinking it's not, and it, you know, we'll just find out later sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Because I think, you know, it does take time, because, you know, the way of the profile means that the older the child gets, the differentiation between them and their peers becomes more obvious. So early on, it could be easy just put down to developmental delay or, you know, just the individual.
Thank you very much, Ali. And that leads me really nicely on to a couple of questions we've had around timescales. And we know that COVID has really caused a pushback on lots of services. Does anyone have any indication of how, from beginning to diagnosis at the moment, what timescale we're looking at? Anyone hearing anything?
Yeah, I don't know. Ali, do you want to go first?
I don't. Well, there's there's no prevalence study that's been done currently, and there is hopefully something in the pipeline that would be a UK-wide thing, which should give us some indication. The survey that I mentioned earlier, hopefully that, if we get a big enough sample, will be useful to that team who are hoping to do that big prevalence study. And from what we've seen at the moment from people that have answered that survey, we're looking around 2+ years, unfortunately.
Yeah, Miranda,
it does depend where you think that your journey started as well.
Yeah, I would add, it's kind of similar. So I think we're kind of caught in a kind of a time of flux, because we've got lots of kind of core like FASD, ADHD, and they're transitioning to this broader neurodevelopmental pathway. So basically, pediatricians should be taking referrals, they should be assessing, or CAMs, they should be assessing, but actually then the times as part of that wider assessment, so we'll say if they're going to do cognitive assessment, or if they're going to do something very specific, it can be slowed quite kind of significantly by that. So I know really that they're kind of triaging, I suppose, in CAMs, you know, the kind of highest tariff in terms of children who are more suicidal, eating disorders. So unfortunately for some, you know, they're kind of responding to the highest tariff in terms of those kind of real life or death situations, unfortunately. I understand, though, it is a huge stress on a family when they're managing and trying to deal with a situation. So again, you're looking at quite a lengthy time period, and it can depend on the health board as well, and where they are at, and who your pediatrician is, who the CAMS person is, things like that. So as parents, you are going to be, you know, as you are already, fantastic advocates for your kids.
It took us about 3 years from realising that I needed to try and find some support for my son to getting a diagnosis.
Yeah, it took me 2.5, and I'm still in the process for one that's verging on 5. So
it's a long haul journey, unfortunately.
But I think maybe a positive to think about is the community that you can engage with on that journey, and that's probably the thing that really keeps you going as a parent. Helps you improve your parenting, helps you know that actually you're not going insane, that you know, things that are happening to other people as well. So, you know, I'd really encourage you to join a community. There's FASD Hub have a community, but there are other online groups as well, and we're really excited within Adoption UK that if you're a member of Adoption UK, we're starting an FASD community group on the 22nd for all AUK members across all 4 nations. around FASD. So, you know, if you're a member of Adoption UK, there's something coming for you next week.
Yeah, really excited. So thank you very much. I'm just going to move on from the diagnosis because we do know it's very difficult. And we've had some questions around characteristics. And one question's come in, and it's about if a child or young person is diagnosed with FASD, does that then affect their eggs, and are they likely to have difficulties then? If that makes any sense. So does the FASD carry on through their genes and through their eggs? Does anybody know?
Anyone else want to answer? I feel like it's going to be the Ali show.
Actually.
So there is evidence of epigenetics, is what it's called, the technical term. But I think the honest answer is nobody really knows. So there's been limited rat study to look at the effects, but the honest truth is that nobody knows, because that's quite a lot of research, and obviously you couldn't really do that research on people. That would be ethically wrong. So yeah, it's true that all women, the eggs that we carry in our body were made when we were in our mother's womb. So actually that egg that we came from our grandmother. So if our mother's mother drank, then that could be impacting us. But that's, you know, there's lots of other features around our characteristics and our genetics that would be true of that as well. And I don't think that we could go as far as saying, oh, well, you know, that would mean that you were going to have a child with FASD. That's, there's no evidence to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's lots of, sorry, Claire, I was just going to say, I think there's lots of hypotheses out there. I think there's kind of initial kind of questions and queries. Oh, sorry. But I suppose a lot of studies as well say, even for mums who are drinking during pregnancy, that we have to be aware of lots of maternal factors, health, their diet, there's lots of things that we don't quite know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, lots of questions around it.
Yeah.
And that's why, the message would be no alcohol, no risk, because actually we don't, the science isn't able to tell us how all of those things impact together. So Miranda could have a baby and have drunk alcohol, and I could have had a baby and drunk alcohol, and we could have had a completely different, could have drank the same amount on the same day, all the rest of it, and completely and utterly different outcomes, because of all those other factors that Miranda said, health and your own genetics and the genetics of the child you're carrying. And we know also, obviously, as adoptive parents, the impacts of trauma, in utero trauma, and trauma just early at birth. So yeah, there's many things going there.
Thank you. We've had another question here. Facial features. It's a misconception, isn't it, that all children and all adults with FASD have the facial features?
Yeah. Would Carol like to answer that?
Yeah, I was going to say, Carol, are you able to take this question?
Yeah, so not everybody will display facial features. Obviously, I was diagnosed at birth because of my facial features and other elements as well, but obviously not everybody has them. And then there's different ways that it can be diagnosed without them as well.
Are there any common features that children and young people that with FASD have?
So we've all seen the pictures where it will show you about, the eyes, the narrow eye sockets, and then obviously the top lip being quite small and stuff like that. Obviously, I've still got elements of that now, but comparison to other people that have got more defined features and stuff, mine are quite mild.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's other features that are quite common, aren't there? Which lots of people report about FASD with the characteristics.
Yeah, so there can be other characteristics that might be physical ones. There's over 400 medical characteristics, heart defects, different things like that are associated with prenatal alcohol exposure, but they don't form part of an FASD diagnosis on their own. The part that would form the FASD diagnosis would be the facial features, but that's only really it's an observation of whether you have them or you don't have them, and that would be the diagnosis you'd then end up with, because the real thing that everybody is looking at is the impact on the brain. So you have to have a minimum of 3 brain domains that have been severely impacted to receive an FASD diagnosis. And so there's common things that we would see in that would be things like poor memory, struggling with impulse control, struggling with, you know, sensory, whether that's hypersensitive or, you know, undersensitivity to, you know, whether that's light, noise, sound, smells, could be lots of different things like that. Executive functioning, so that kind of front part of our brain, you know, thinking about, is this a good idea? You know, so when you mix all of that together with an impulse control and not necessarily learning from cause and effect learning, it becomes what we call a spiky profile. So every individual on the spectrum is completely unique, as we all are really, but you wouldn't find like a cohort of people with FASD wouldn't all be operating at the same level and have exactly the same challenges. And I'd love Carol to speak a bit more, because I know she's, you know, an amazing adult with some amazing skills. And yeah, you talk, Carol, about kind of yourself and how you manage.
So for me, my mum and dad adopted me knowing that I had this FASD diagnosis, but to them it wasn't a thing. They still don't believe in it. Well, my mum still doesn't believe in it now. And I only learnt about it when I got my adoption file, when my dad passed away. So I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I knew that I had it. For me, growing up, though, obviously I didn't have access to support, and neither did my mum. And that's what I feel guilty about now, because she could have had so much support. But they were very much closed off, saying, we'll prove everybody wrong, you know. She was basically told not to expect much academically or socially or anything. You know, I was quite introverted, but she kind of put a wee bit of dampener on things. But that didn't affect them. You know, I was taken in with open arms, and my mum gave up her work and did so much to like support me. Everything was educational based. You know, we'd go and visit educational things. It was all about learning and stuff like that. And like obviously it's work, so you know the whole nurturing side is very important. So, but for me, a lot of it's reflection. So like looking back about, you know, where I struggled at school, you know, the transition for school and university, why that didn't work out, the relationships I had throughout my life with either friends or being vulnerable or taking a Lena, so to speak, getting into a lot of trouble that my mum puts down to just being a typical teenager, because again, she doesn't believe that FASD is a thing. But, you know, it helps me then, you know, look back and understand why I did certain things or why certain things happened. And actually to reflect to see that I'd already put strategies in place without even knowing it, because I didn't know I had it. You know, I'd always have 2 jobs. I'd always be overly busy, overly active, because at the end of the day, then I would just sleep, and then I wouldn't have time to do anything irrational or, you know, out of character and stuff like that. And I'm still like that now. I work 2 jobs and do lots of volunteering, and I've got 3 kids. And just for record, none of my kids have it, but my middle kid has going through ADHD. Referral at this stage, so I would highlight that there as well. But yeah, no, for me, keeping overly busy and active, everybody calls me a mad woman, but it's my way of dealing with things. And I think my kids have just got used to that routine and that now too, because I used to feel guilty, but they know that it's just the way mummy does it, so she's not crab it basically. So yeah, that's it.
Could I ask, Carol, could I just ask then, do you feel then as an adult receiving the FASD diagnosis, did it make a difference for you?
I think it did, because it made me understand things that I did when I was younger. You know, I've tried to sit with my mum and say to her, look, remember when this happened, and remember when that happened, and this is why. And she's like, nah, it was fine. It's just those funny years, she used to always call it, but I was still having those funny years in my 20s. So yeah, for me, it kind of put my mind at ease, because like I used to like carry the world on my shoulders if I'd done something wrong or felt like I'd let someone down. I just felt like a moody teenager for a longer than what I should have, sort of thing. But yeah, it did help me reflect a bit better and then, you know, move forward with that. So it did make a difference to me, even though it was a bit late. But you know, everything happens for a reason, and I got where I needed to be in the end. It just took a bit longer, but that's fine, because the life experience and that came with it. So I think I was in a better place to process it all a bit better.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for sharing with such honesty, because I think a lot of times when we start going for a diagnosis for our children, the question that comes up time and time again is, what difference does a diagnosis make? Why do you want this diagnosis for your child? And I think you summed up perfectly why it's so important we do get diagnosis. So thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. And it's really interesting to hear how you found your own strategies without realising that's what you were doing.
Definitely helps being overly busy. My partner says I'm a nightmare when I'm not, so that's still happening at this stage even now. So.
But has it helped you to be able to explain to people?
Yeah.
Giving it a name, really, that it's not just the difficult teenage years.
No, and it's good, you know, getting welcomed into, like, you know, the FASD Hub community and the family sort of thing. It's been really good, and through that's led to lots of opportunities. Like, I wouldn't be in the job that I was in now. You know, I'm getting the FASD Hub involved with talking to students and staff at the college and stuff now. So it's really spreading the word and, you know, getting it out there. And we've got people contacting me, you know, through seeing things on Twitter and things like that. And they you know, I went to school and they're like, we never knew, you know, that this is what was going on. So yeah, it's led to lots of wonderful things, and I think it still will continue to do so. So I'm very fortunate to have FASD in a way, because it makes me who I am, and it's led to loads of stuff. So yeah.
Thank you, and we are very fortunate that you're sharing your experience with us. Because it helps enormously. And if you'd like to just have a look at the chat at some of the comments that have come in from what you've just been saying. So thank you very much, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that kind of, it's a great lead on. We often get questions, and we've had some questions tonight, around misdiagnosis and what FASD could look like and how it can be misdiagnosed. Does anybody want to take that or talk about how that can often happen?
Just share my experience when we actually took our boy to get checked out for an ADHD diagnosis. That was actually where it was discovered that in his notes he had actually been diagnosed with FASD at birth, but we didn't know anything about it, and we had been his foster carers and obviously now his adopters. So when they were obviously looking at the signs of ADHD, but FASD didn't get mentioned. So for us, when this did get mentioned, that then looking at that against the backdrop of actually the FASD first and the ADHD symptoms coming out from that, that just opened up a whole new world of, as Carol said, actually learning about actually specifically what is FASD. And that then enabled us to then understand a lot of what our son was doing. And again, obviously opened up doors for us to then try and share with those around us, because obviously people just look at the outside, they look at the behaviours, and either they write them off as, oh, boys are just like that, or they go, you know, you really need to do something about that. So actually for us as parents, when we weren't just looking at an ADHD, just the busyness, the hyperactivity, when we actually got that revelation, as it was for us, that the FASD was in his notes, then that just opened up so much more, and we were then able to understand, and actually that's helped us begin to accommodate for him and begin to advocate for him, just in everyday life, not just education, but actually just friends and family who, as I say, struggled.
No, thank you, Debbie. And we had a similar story, that we had a diagnosis of ADHD that was done by CAMS, and I literally accidentally fell into a training course on FASD, went into the wrong room more or less, and sat there and got neck ache from nodding to everything that they were saying, because it just felt much more than ADHD. It felt different. Yes. And suddenly being in this room, and I was just nodding going, oh my goodness, and I got really excited that I had discovered what made sense about my son.
Yes.
And it's that feeling, isn't it, that it's different and it feels different and you know it's different.
Yes.
and having that, you know, so, as Carol's spoken about, that feeling that you found somewhere that you belong, that people understand, and that you can share very openly and honestly and get that support is invaluable. And that's, I think, is why it's so important if you can get the right diagnosis.
Absolutely. And I think for me as a parent, I've actually benefited from the FASD Hub and actually had a parent partner, and having someone that I could talk to once a week who, we use the phrase get it. And it's so important to have people round about you who get it, because there are far too many people who don't, and people can find themselves isolated from friends and family because they just don't understand. And it can be difficult, again, dealing with school and education, again, if they've not come up across it. So actually having a place, having that, you know, we talk about a tribe, but it's like finding your tribe. It's like finding the people who go, yes, and you can share, and they totally understand and totally get it. Not because all our children are the same, but there are these common things that we all kind of go through, the challenges that we all face. And so actually, you know, as you say, when you kind of get the diagnosis, when you find people who understand it, as I say, it's kind of like eureka. It doesn't take away the challenge, but you just feel as if you're not alone anymore. And a lot of parents, and that's possibly foster carers and adopters, definitely feel sometimes that they're just isolated and they don't have people who fully understand. So yeah, it makes such a difference to be able to have the knowledge that we have now, because even in this last 3-4 years of me catching up, it's wonderful to see the wealth of information that's coming out, which wasn't there previously. So it's tremendous to have all the help you can get.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you, Debbie, for sharing that. It's really important to hear about your journey. So thank you. Ali, I think this is an ideal opportunity before we move on to education, because we've got lots of questions around education. Could we watch the animation?
We can indeed. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. We can indeed. Just 1 second.
Thank you. This is an animation that Ali and the team have. It's amazing. Absolutely, it blows me away how fantastic this is. And it's the first of its kind, isn't it, Ali?
Yeah, it is. It's first of its kind. It's been produced with the input from a group of young people and adults with FASD and their parents and carers, and also siblings, because it's really important to remember that for lots of our families, you know, there's other children in the family unit as well. And the voiceover is by a young man called Connor, who lives in Scotland, who's 13 and is a young man with FASD. So please enjoy.
Thank you. The sound's not coming through, Ali.
Oh, sorry, hang on. Sorry, that's my fault. I didn't click the button. Okay.
Perfect.
It's really early in the morning. Mom and Dad are still asleep, but because of my FASD, my brain is always busy, and I'm already wide awake. Mom and Dad have made a planner for my day. I find it easier if I know what's happening and when. 8 o'clock means breakfast. Jam on toast is my favourite. I love the crunchy feeling of the burnt toast between my teeth. Mom and Dad know all about FASD. So does my auntie. She's having a baby. She isn't drinking any alcohol while pregnant, making sure my new cousin is as safe as possible. Doctors now know that it is not safe to drink alcohol at any time when pregnant. Mum says it's not always been that way. Lots of people still don't realise how dangerous alcohol can be to an unborn baby. Secondary school is a lot different to primary. Instead of one classroom, I've got 7 in one day. There are so many more people to get to know and things to remember. I hope everyone likes me. Sometimes it's too much at once. I feel much better now. Today I get to tell my class about FASD and why I think differently about the world around me. It's not just me, it could be as many as 1 in 20 people. It's more common than autism and ADHD. People need to think differently like I do. When people with FASD like me are supported by family, professionals and friends like you, then we can achieve great things. I like giving presentations and talking, though I'm not always so confident with maths. It sometimes helps to work things out in a different way. Thanks, Juliet. After school, I visit my friends at our FASD community group. We all have FASD, but we're each unique. Alfie and I love adventures. We like the way going high on the swing makes us feel all wizzy. Anna is very kind to animals. Sometimes she needs a reminder to be gentle. Alyssa is really musical. She loves the vibrations of the drum. Sometimes she plays too loud for me, but that's okay. I like dancing. After seeing my friends, I am starving. Hurry up, Dad. 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 Dad, I'm hungry. After a long day, I'm tired and my brain feels all fuzzy. But my family understands that my brain works differently. They know how to help me. I play my baby cousin a lullaby before bed. I can't wait to meet her. I have strengths and talents, and there is lots more to me than my FASD. But my FASD can often make life tricky, confusing and frustrating when those around me don't understand why I think differently. When they think differently, life is much easier. My FASD makes me, me.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I'm not sure if any of you have had a chance to watch that before, but it's very powerful and explains FASD. So thank you very much. We're going to lead straight into some of the questions around education. So what help and support is there for people that are homeschooling? There's lots talked about school, which we'll come on to, but around the homeschooling side?
Well, I am a home educator. For my madness. Yeah, I've been home educating for 5 years now. I don't home educate all of our children, and currently in the transition for one of them into school, but that's a whole different story. Anybody who is home educating will know that it can be tricky to come across support. We can't access some of the services that you would access through if your child was in mainstream school, but there is an online community of adoptive parents who also have children with FASD. I would say that search on Facebook and you will find lots of places that around home educating resources, and anyone that does home educate or is thinking about it, I'm always happy to chat. There's actually a few people within Adoption UK who home educate, so I'm sure a few of us would be happy to do that. I think Becky's done some webinars previously as well around that subject, which you can find on the members area. Becky Brooke, who has written a book about school as well. And in relation to your child, I guess one thing I would flag is within any neurodevelopmental pathway, they're going to be looking in a sort of traditional sense. So they're looking for feedback from parents and carers about how their child presents at home, but then they're looking to triangulate that. And the biggest place they look to triangulate that is school. So if your child isn't in mainstream school, then again, just sort of have that in your mind and be thinking, where else could we suggest that they could triangulate the presentation or even the differences, because our children present differently in different environments. All kids do that. That's not something specific about FASD, but that's something to remember. So, you know, if you're a home educator, then you'll know that we all home ed in different ways. And if you're completely new to it, then please get in touch, because we can direct you to lots of different resources. There is also on the adoption, I think it's still there on the Adoption UK website. Becky and I wrote a fact sheet a few years ago around home education. So we can try and get the link for that and send that after this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any top tips around education?
Where would you like to start?
I know it's such a broad subject, and we need to kind of summarise it in a few top tips if we can.
Okay, could I maybe suggest, because I know this, you know, I suppose this comes up a lot from parents who kind of are on maybe the journey of, you know, looking at the diagnosis and kind of wanting to share, wanting to explore with schools. Sometimes I think just kind of contacting the kind of, you know, the kind of contact person in the school, like if it's going to be the depute, or it might be a year head in secondary school, and just actually just saying, could I share this information with you? And then kind of getting probably, you know, there's like really good, obviously, you know, fact sheets from FASD Hub. NHS Aaron and Ayrshire had resources for educators as well. So I've used that quite a lot just to share and just to give, I suppose, education staff the opportunity. Not everybody's going to hear about it, not everybody's going to know about it, but just to give them the opportunity to start to find out as well. And I think I also like to highlight to education staff as well that every child is an individual. It's not a kind of blanket diagnosis, a blanket presentation. You know, they're wonderfully, you know, all the conversations I've had with schools, you know, you talk about, you know, the humor, the laughter, and the warm relationships that they really engage in, the kind of the creative side, you know, they're into all these different things. And it's also just knowing how to nurture those relationships. So I think that's a huge thing for me. And what I talk about with school staff, because I've just done that recently, is really need to engage children. And probably the first way to engage any child is through developing a relationship with them. And then from there, I think learning. There, thank you for the prompt.
Thank you very much. Carol, thinking back to your school days, what do you think helped or would have helped you now that you know about your diagnosis?
I think any help would have been a bonus. Obviously, I had nothing at all. So I just went through school with no learning support or anything like that. And my mum was very pushy in the fact that although she was told I wouldn't be academically minded, she still made me sit higher and everything else with a view to just hope for the best. Like I did struggle. Maths was a big problem. Physics and stuff like that, I really struggled with them. But I excelled in like music and art, and English and things like that. I did get the grades to go to university, and I think at that stage, because I'd left school and I'd got a job, and then we got told I'd been accepted, I think it was like, well, you need to go because we never thought this was ever going to happen, sort of thing. So you felt obliged that you needed to. Like I wanted to be an art teacher, but my mum was like, no, you'll go and do the teaching element first and then do the art later. So that was the common ground with her. But yeah, I grew up in a small town in Fife, and everybody knew me. They knew, you know, my background and stuff like that. Not with the FASD sort of thing, but the local community knew that I was adopted and things like that. And I went up to Aberdeen on my own as an 18-year-old, like a rabbit in the headlights, so with no life skills or common sense, so to speak. And I really, really struggled. And I came home with my tail between my legs, thinking, I'm not capable of doing it. you know, they were right all along. So that was a big learning curve for me. But then, you know, before my adoptive dad passed away, he told me to get back into education, because it'd been a couple of years then. He's like, look, you've got a lot of life experience and you've got a lot to give. Get back and do something with it. So I did. So I went back to college when I was in my early 30s to do my HNC, HND, and I went on to do a degree, and I've just completed my master's. So yeah, I've got there in the end. It's just been a little bit disjointed along the way. But I think for me, one of the big things, and I'm a big advocate for it as well, is, you know, if they did fully know, you know, my background, then obviously I'm a guidance advisor now, but my guidance teacher at high school said I needed to go to a traditional university to get where I wanted to be in life. When I think if I'd went the college route and did the HNC, HND first, it was a bit more of a better stepping stone for me. And I really thrived within that environment. And it's led to me being able to talk about my background, you know, about FASD, you know, about my struggles, about even just being care experienced and adopted and stuff like that. And it's changed my life completely, being able to, you know, albeit it has been a bit later in life, but yeah, I think being open and honest about it and being allowed to talk about it. You know, I come from a family where it was very closed doors. My mum kind of thought, you've got enough labels on you already, we don't need to put any more. And I get where she was coming from, but again, I think we need to advocate that it's not asking for help isn't a weakness, it's a sign of strength, and a collective strength goes a long way. So yeah.
Thank you, Karen. You've done absolutely amazing. And I think it's actually harder going back than it is just carrying on from school.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant. So well done. Debbie, what would be your top tip for school?
Well, my wee boy just made the transition from primary to secondary. So one of the things that I did was got in touch with his guidance teacher and told her how I really did want to build a strong relationship with her, good communication, because my boy doesn't always tell me anything that's happening. And if I ask the question, how did today go? Fine, will always be the answer. So I wanted to kind of stay in touch with her, and what I did was I put together just a 1 A4 sheet, my boy, and just told the things that he loved, his favourite characters, his favourite games. We have a Labrador, so and he is besotted by Poppy, and so these were all things that teachers could use to engage with him and pull him into conversation with him. And I also put in, I didn't want to assume whether teachers had ever heard of FASD or knew about FASD. So I just said, this is very briefly what it is, but this is how it affects my boy. And I think that's a really important message, which has been mentioned already, that every child is different. So it was about telling the guidance teacher, this is what to look for. And these are some of the calming techniques. And so that's kind of what I did. And she looked at it and has given it out to some of the class, the class teachers to be able to help. So that's certainly my top tips, was just giving some information, finding someone who would be that go-between between home and school, and just looking and having communication and conversation to build a relationship, because this is the start of a long journey. And as I say, I don't always hear from my boy, so it's good to be able to hear from the school and keep in touch. So that's my top tip.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you very much. Just going to move on to, I think, what the final section really is about parenting. So we've got some questions which have come in, and it's around two kind of sides. One, how can we support siblings of those with FASD? Because I think they're often the forgotten ones. So, Ali, did you want to take this question?
Sorry, I was busy typing a reply to someone.
Sorry.
Can you ask me what the question was again, please?
Yeah, siblings. Siblings are often the forgotten ones, aren't they? How can we help and support siblings?
Yeah, it's really important to support siblings. I mean, siblings could be placed obviously as come together into a family, or they could be siblings who are added. Or it could be that you've got birth children and then you adopt. Or you could adopt and then have a birth child. So siblings come into families in many different ways. And depending on that will also depend on, you know, how they are likely to trigger one another. And it doesn't always follow that because one child has got FASD by exactly the same, you know, biological makeup, i.e. mum and dad are exactly the same, it doesn't mean that there would be FASD in both siblings either, because of the things that we said earlier about other aspects of maternal health. But I think what's really important is in our family, you know, unsurprisingly, probably, we're really open about FASD and adoption, and everybody knows about it. And in fact, my daughter, my eldest daughter, gave a presentation today at school on FASD and played the animation to a class and answered lots of questions. So she, in her own right, is becoming an advocate for her brother and his neurodiversity. And, you know, understanding that for herself as well, and maybe what part of that is in her journey, you know, in her kind of story. So siblings are immensely important. It's immensely important that, you know, they're there to understand each other, because at some point as a parent, we're not going to be there, but they will be. And, you know, it's like all aspects, I guess, of bringing up children. You know, children don't always get on, and siblings definitely don't always get on. You know, they can fight like cat and dog, but then be thick as thieves. And I guess it's, you know, for us, it's been about sharing all aspects of their, you know, what they're happy to share, but within a family environment where it's safe and secure.
Thank you very much. And one of the last questions is around NVR, non-violence resistance, with our children, or any other parenting tips that can really help and can really work. Anyone able to share their experience?
Debbie, do you want to share something first?
Obviously around the NVR is basically just, I suppose the thing that I got out of doing the course was, what is it that's really important? What are the things that trigger my boy, and what are the things that trigger me? And I think when you can reduce them down to the top two, or the top three, you then, I suppose it's like that old adage, choose your battles, choose the things that are important and just stick with them, let the rest go, because you can't pick up on everything. So if there's one or two things, it really worked for me because it helped me understand. For my wee one, it was language and swearing and personally coming at me with that. I found that really difficult. When I sat down with my husband, it was spitting. It was the spitting that he really found very difficult. And that was really interesting. So I think the NVR helped us as a family recognise what were the triggers for us. And so we could prepare ourselves, because like, forget everything else, how are we going to deal with it when he does this? And NVR talks about sitting, having a conversation after the event, not when everybody's escalating, and how to actually avoid those escalations, and actually how to just afterwards have a conversation and to be able to chat through things. I have to say that didn't always work, but life is definitely better since I've done that course and learning what are the things that were our triggers in his. And I think it's just a really good way of beginning to understand and have conversations, and even being able to ask him, can you tell me what happened? Did I say something? Or starting with, I'm sorry. That's a really good one. I'm sorry that this happened earlier. I'm sorry that I said, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. And it's a really good way of being able to engage, because then I found that he would engage and we could actually pick up from there and we could fix things and resolve things. So that's my experience of doing the NVR course and the kind of aftermath.
Thank you. And I think for a lot of us, it's understanding that they can't, not won't.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the biggest turning point, isn't it? When you think actually they're not doing this because they won't do it, it's because they're unable to.
Yes, you have to say to yourself, it's brain, it's brain, it's brain.
Brain, it's brain, not blame.
It's not personal, it's not personal.
Yeah.
Could I, sorry, I was just going to say, could I add, Claire, just in terms of education, you know, as parents and, you know, the young people who have FASD, they are the experts, you know, so I think, Debbie, what you described in terms of knowing your child's triggers and the language you use, how you approach the context, how you deal and de-escalate a situation. That's all the stuff, like I'd always say, just generally to parents, share that with school. Give them the language, the exact
Yes.
language that you use. Like, and I literally say, no, the actual words that came out of your mouth. Just
Yes.
share that with the adult, and actually empowers the school staff as well to know that this is tried and tested. And I mean, they'll use their own kind of way of dealing with things, but it just gives them the insight about this is, you know, this can be managed. The young people can be supported.
Absolutely.
So I would just say, Joe, that's all fantastic information you.
Yeah, one thing that I literally just shared with them, Jake will not always know when he's gone too far, shall we say. So I actually sat down with him and said, I will always tell you, I will use the phrase, you're going too far. And that would be that phrase that he would know. And that would be the one that I would say before I would leave the room. Like, you're going too far. I'm just going to let you calm. I'm going to leave. And so I said to school, because they had found him, he'd obviously escalated in a class. And so I had said to them, he won't always know that he's going too far. So actually, this is a phrase that I use. And maybe this is something that you can use, which actually is an indicator to him. But this is also what I do. He will need to go somewhere else. He will need to calm. He will need to be taken from that place or given a quiet space so that he can de-escalate and so he can then be restored and go forward.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious of the time, so we're going to kind of, I think, come to a natural end there. But Charlie, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
There was a couple of things I suppose I wanted to say, Claire, and I suppose just picking up on some of the things that Carol was talking about earlier. One of the things that struck me when I was listening to Carol is that how ambitious her parents were for her. And in many respects, regardless of obviously having a diagnosis later in life, and also hearing from Debbie and Ali, I mean, clearly have strong ambition for their children. And I know that is something, certainly as an adoption, that we try to promote very much with, you know, with the families that we work with, that we need to be and we should be ambitious for our children, regardless of the challenges and early, you know, the poor starts on many of the children that we work with have had in life. The only other thing I did want to briefly say, and I think it was kind of touched upon, some of the families that we've worked with in terms of helping support them with children, I'm not saying it hasn't been challenging at primary school, but I think when children have moved on to the secondary school phase of their kind of educational journey, it has become more challenging. And I think in some ways, part of that has been down to communication. And I realise in practical terms, clearly, and I think it was actually highlighted in the video that actually, of course, you go from having one class teacher to suddenly having to deal with 7 different teachers in a school day, really. And I suppose I just wanted to say that. But I know one of the things that many of our families would say is that communication is utterly key, really, I think, and ensuring that, you know, that all the people who are looking after, caring for and educating their young people, you know, have an awareness of, you know, the issues for, you know, for the young person. And I know that is difficult when you've got a classroom of 25 or 30 people, you know, but as I say, I just wanted to mention that because I think it is quite important.
No, thank you very much, Charlie. I would like to say thank you so much to the panel for sharing such knowledge, experience, sharing your honesty, your hints and your tips. And I wish that I'd have had this years ago. It would have made life so much better. The website is absolutely fantastic and it's packed full of information. And it's new things are being added all the time. It's trying to keep up with how much it's growing. So thank you so much to Ali and her team for the FASD Hub, because you really are leading the way. Carol, thank you for your story and for being here tonight, because I think it's amazing hearing from you and just listening to how fantastic, you know, those qualifications that you've got are fantastic. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Debbie, also thank you for your time, for sharing about, you know, what it's like to be an adoptive mum, and for using humour, because I think that's what gets us through, doesn't it? It can come across as being quite difficult sometimes, but I think we always laugh. Our children always make us laugh.
Hysterically at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Miranda, thank you for your education input. I'm sorry that we didn't get to delve. We need to do a webinar, I think, around Just for Education. So we shall maybe look if we can do another one around that, if we can get you involved in that. So that we've got lots of time.
I'll get my sound sorted as well.
Yeah. Thank you. And Charlie, thank you so much for coming on, because it's been really interesting to hear, you know, about, you know, from the agency point of view, and your experience there. So thank you for sharing that. And I would also like to say thank Barbara, who's hidden behind the AUK Scotland sign. So thank you so much, Barbara, for copying and doing all of the chat, and for all of setting everything up, because without you, tonight wouldn't have happened. So thank you. And the last thank you goes to everyone who's joined us. It's been really great having you here. For me, knowing that it's so well attended is fantastic, that the message is getting out there, the awareness is there, and for asking so many brilliant questions. I said I'm always blown away by the amount of questions we get, so I apologise that we didn't get around to everybody, but I'd like to say thank you so much. So thank you very much, everybody, and that's the end of tonight.